everything, down to the last minute details.
You fucking...
Hello everyone, welcome to the Entertainment Geek. I am Rocky Rambert. Today, we are going to talk about one of the most loved franchises which set a new benchmark in the entire superhero genre and single-handedly responsible for multiple cinematic universes and how it's being ruined due to its latest installments. Imagine, this is 2012.
Shakespeare in the Park?
You're watching one of the most ambitious projects in the superhero genre and you witness Captain America, Iron Man and Thor fighting each other in a distant forest. This is the first time we witnessed the holy trinity of MCU on the big screens. These three men brought MCU their unique character traits. Tony Stark, a billionaire tech genius, self-absorbed person, strong-willed individual who doesn't work well with authority of anyone else apart from himself. Captain America, a super soldier, extremely noble person with high morality and unfallenly dependable, the one who keeps the band together and leads the Avengers. Thor, a literal god, impulsive, headstrong, arrogant person with unmatched strength and power, but still naive. These three men became the foundation of the greatest franchise we have ever seen. Throughout the time from the start of MCU Phase 1 to Phase 3, we have witnessed many memorable movies with great character arcs, remarkable storytelling, and a perfect finishing for one of the greatest saga we have ever seen in the movie history. We showcased the true meaning of ultimate sacrifice, and so began the multiverse saga with Phase 4, where most of the characters were coming out of their losses and finding peace with themselves. With many strong and dominant characters getting a satisfactory or heartbreaking end in Infinity Saga, this was a perfect opportunity for MCU to bring new characters and give completely new dimension to the franchise, but instead we got back-to-back lackluster projects. Apart from Spider-Man No Way Home, none of the movies were able to make big, both in terms of story as well as box office. MCU made couple of good Disney Plus series on streaming platform, yet compared to the number of projects which were released and the number of projects which were actually successful, the results are in far margin. So, what happened to this franchise? As per most of the creators, they believe that we audience didn't like the fact that females, characters from different color and characters from LGBTQ community were taking the center stage with strong characters in MCU. But this is not the case. We didn't like these movies or characters not because they were led by female or people from minority. We didn't like these characters because there was nothing special about these characters. There are certain reasons why people like characters like Tony Stark. The reason is we are well aware of their stories and we connect to their characters. It's true that no matter how good you make a movie, there will always be a certain set of people who don't like the movie. But this is not the case when it comes to these recent installments. These movies were highly criticized by the critics and mostly rejected by the audience. So in this video, we are gonna dive deep into the pits of MCU Phase 4 and understand the problems and its impact on audience. Let's start from the scratch. It all started on 2nd of June 2017 when one Amazon goddess came out of nowhere and revived the entire DC extended universe. This was the time where both Superman and Batman were trying hard to make big cut box office. As a result of this, DC got their own version of Trinity. And this is where the strong woman problem started for MCU. This disappointed a part of MCU fanbase as they felt that there was not enough strong female representation in MCU. As an insult to injury, DC's Trinity had a female character who was strong, distinct and independent. As a result of this new DC Trinity, there is a huge campaign going around in media questioning why there are no strong female representation in MCU, and people started to question if there will ever be a strong female character like Wonder Woman. As a result of this, Kevin Feige had to confirm that there will be more female superheroes in the future days of MCU. This was the inception of today's so-called MCU. To start with the lack of strong female representation, which honestly wasn't a problem for MCU at that time because there were a lot of characters who were much better than men at that time. For example, Ancient one of the characters who made Thanos wait for perfect time of attack. She was the Sorcerer Supreme and the one who trained Doctor Strange. Scarlet Witch, who was a new addition to the team with lot of potential, and she was being groomed under the Avengers. Gamora, typically the one who is more responsible than Peter Quill and the one who makes the calls in difficult times. Hope, the one who trained Scott to be the Ant-Man, whom we saw later take up the mantle of Wasp in the second installment of the movie, where the story was more driven towards Hope and her family rather than Scott. There are extremely popular female characters in Marvel like the Invisible Woman, Jean Grey, Storm, Rogue, Elektra, but MCU didn't have right to these characters at that time. So this led to the announcement from Kevin Feige stating that there will be more female superheroes in the coming days, and he envisions that more than half of the MCU superheroes will be female. As a reply to DC's Wonder Woman, MCU tried to come up with their own version of Strong Lady, and this got us to Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson, who had a difficult time with movie and public at that time. This movie actually made $1 billion, not because this was a good movie, because this movie had the best placing in MCU. This movie got released after Infinity War and just before Endgame. I still remember me and my friend discussing the good and bad part of this movie because the only good part about this movie was the end credits where she meets the other Avengers. In addition, this movie also had a gender swap of original Captain Marvel into a lady, played by Annette Bening. This is not the first time MCU made such gender swap. Ancient One is an old-aged Asian male character in the comics, but played by Tilda Swinton. No one had any issues with this character adaptation because the representation of this character was on spot. But on the other hand, the Captain Marvel's gender swap was a complete character assassination of one of the best as well as the original Marvels. This movie was the first official entry into MCU. This was followed by The Black Widow, where we saw one of the biggest disappointments of all time, the Taskmaster. They represented Taskmaster as some sort of cyborg and it was played by a woman. If anyone read the comics or at least played the latest Spider-Man game, you'd know who Taskmaster is. He's a deadly assassin who is a master in combat. He is hard to beat as he copies all your moves and he has perfected to mimic all the superheroes flawlessly. MCU's version of Taskmaster not only made the character look dumb, but also feels like the character without soul. If you are thinking like this is the biggest disappointment from MCU as a character, then wait for these two. The Mighty Thor from Thor Love and Thunder, She-Hulk from the She-Hulk. I don't want to talk much about these two projects because these two requires a dedicated video which are already in progress, so stay tuned. Moving on to the next issue which is haunting MCU in the recent times is The Perfect Woman. The main lore of superhero movies is heroes taking over the problems which are embodied by villains. Heroes living their dual life being more human than gods. Heroes being projected to these social problems and still rise above everything, find courage, stand up to wrong and willing to sacrifice themselves to do the right thing and save the day. The basic premise of good winning over evil. Just like we need good heroes, we also need good villains. A good story which tests our heroes to their limits. Unfortunately, we don't have any significant heroes or villains in MCU Phase 4. All the heroes come out of nowhere who are literally next to perfection. The only thing that is stopping them to reach their full potential is a little amount of confidence, which they'll eventually find somewhere in the movie. That's all it takes for them to save the day. A little assisted confidence. Natasha takes all sorts of bumps, punches, hits, falls, crashes, blasts, and still picks herself, brushes off the dirt and continue like it's nothing, literally like a super soldier. Natasha defeated Dreykov and his Red Room just like it was a walk in the park. Headbutting desk, some technical help from Melina, some emotional scenes to fool him, bingo, he is defeated. Cersei, who is shown to create water and plants, is now in the center stage taking powers of all other Eternals and stopping birth of a Celestial, who is a godlike being in MCU, that too in the first attempt which is perfectly executed while Icarus is trying hard to fight and get out of it. Kate Bishop, who is a college athlete, takes a group of mobs and beat them up without any prior training. In addition to that, she goes one-on-one with Elena, a Black Widow, trained master assassin who is best in killing and still keep up with her in her combat. If you are still trying to understand the logic behind these scenes, don't worry, you're not the only one who is having a hard time to understand it. This is too easy for them. A perfect character who is flawless comes to save the day. MCU Phase 4 showed us female heroes having the heroic moment, but these heroic moments feel little off the mark. This is not because we all hate female heroes. The reason why this movement feel little off the mark is this heroic moments feels unworthy. We haven't seen their character arc. They struggle to become the person they are today. We haven't seen them being tested, being in their low spot, their motivation behind their choices, and most importantly, these heroic moments seems illogical. One of the core reasons why MCU is receiving heavy backlash in Phase 4 is due to its treatment to male characters. In simple logic, as per Phase 4 movies and series, men aren't good unless they are from minority or LGBTQ community. Women are good. Even if they are bad and make bad choices, they are still good because they are victims. Let's go through it one by one. In Black Widow, Taskmaster is the main villain showcased in the trailer and teasers, whom we get to know is a woman. Natasha had to fight Taskmaster and all of the Black Widows, but they are all controlled by the main villain of the movie, Dreykov, a man. In the Eternals movie, we find out that the main purpose of the Eternals is to make sure emergence happens and the new Celestial is born. Only Ajax is aware of this from the beginning. But wait a moment. Ajax is trying hard to stop the emergence, and she was betrayed by the true villain of the movie, Icarus, a man. In the Hawkeye series, Kate and Clint were tracked by Maya to stop them. But wait. She was being manipulated and lied by the true villain of the series, Kingpin, who again is a man. In Falcon and Winter Soldier, Carla is clearly a terrorist who killed many innocent people to get what she wants, but the show treated her as an innocent tragic hero, a victim mistreated by the government. You guessed it right, men were ruling the country. Basically, what creators are trying to represent is men are oppressors who are suppressing females. Due to this, females has to step up, take charge and eliminate these men to liberate the society. You might have felt like you heard it somewhere, right? Yes. This is the basic motto and present day representation of feminism and woke culture. This woke culture is one of the main reasons why most of the movies are failing. Women trying to take place of men who earned it with couple of years or decades of hard work to reach there, and these women are trying to educate men that the world would be a better place if you give this position to a woman because they deserve it more. If you question them how they deserve it more, most of their answer would be because I'm a woman. To keep the video short, I'm not going to talk about the woke culture affecting movies in this video because this topic deserves a special video. Moving on, MCU Phase 4 is the change of tides from the previous phases where men had the strong and dominant characters and it actually worked because of the art of storytelling. In previous phases, we saw some of the great stories, good heroes, great villains, remarkable anti-heroes. Take example of Thanos. Even today, there are some people who debate Thanos was right. Thanos is the actual hero of Infinity War. We all agree to it because of Thanos' character arc. Infinity Saga had a great story. A competent mighty villain who can take up on Earth's mightiest heroes. If you watch the final battle in the endgame, Thanos actually beats up the Marvel Trinity all alone. Once all the Avengers assembles, it was at that moment he commands his army to take charge. These subtle movements show the true nature of the character. Throughout the Infinity War and Endgame, the story was in grey area. We can't clearly say whose motive was right and whose motive was wrong. Thanos was right in his own way, and Avengers were right in their own way. This is the actual reason why Thanos has a separate fanbase. Not because he's a purple mad titan with the hobby of collecting sparkling stones, but his ideology kept him different from the previous MCU villains. Everything I just mentioned is missing in MCU Phase 4. Recent movies seems to be banking more on ethnicity, diversity and culture rather than good story. Having more diverse people is good, but if you are trying to bank your project more on diversity rather than story, your project is already down the hill. The diverse representation is actually used by the creators and actors to appreciate themselves as how forward thinking they are. The diverse representation of MCU has turned out to be the main loophole rather than being its core strength and a shield to any criticism from the viewers. The creators are forcing minorities to like this project just because of the fact that their culture, religion and sexual identity is showcased in the movies. If we ignore the women problem, this is the second main reason why most of the audience are criticizing MCU. Baiting the audience. When MCU announced their Phase 4 plans, there were many high anticipated movies. Also, they introduced MCU series which were making their debut on the streaming platform. One among them is Loki. Loki is one of the fan favorite character. Everyone were thrilled when they announced that Loki is a series about Loki and his other variants. But once the show was aired, it was nothing but a trick to grab audience attention. It was Loki's series where he had more screen time than others, but it was not his story. He was not star of the show. It was one of his variants, Lady Loki.
This isn't about you.
The Loki series is a story about female Loki or Sylvie, who is far more superior than our Loki. Loki is present to provide the necessary emotional support to her as she takes on some crazy decisions which will affect the sacred timeline. The baiting game didn't end there. One of the high anticipated movies of Phase 4, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is directed by Sam Raimi. This movie isn't really about Doctor Strange. It's a story about a crazy witch who is desperately searching for her unborn children by ripping up the reality and sacrificing people to achieve them, even if it takes to killing her own variant. Doctor Strange is basically here to babysit another hero, America Chavez. Doctor Strange's main purpose in this movie is to remind her how wonderful and capable she already is and give her the necessary slight confidence and make her believe in herself to reach the perfection. Imagine having a title as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and using the titular character as a side character. No wonder why people hate Scarlet Witch these days. We see this baiting game again in Hawkeye, which basically isn't a show about Clint Barton, but his replacement Kate Bishop. Hawkeye is her little sidekick as she literally drives the story by navigating through bad guys and pushing the plot forward. This continues with Thor Love and Thunder as well as She-Hulk. These projects seem more like banking on the popularity of the established characters and eventually make these new characters take their place as the better ones or replace them with their counterparts who are females. This method is not unique to one project, but this is the basic frame of most of the projects. Doctor Strange to America Chavez, Clint Barton to Kate Bishop, Bruce Banner to Jennifer Waltz, Thor Odinson to Mighty Thor. All this follow the same basic principle. To conclude, MCU Phase 4 tried to push female heroes as the leading characters and utterly failed at it, both in movies and streaming platform. This is a complete new version of MCU where movies are not based on stories or characters but based on people's identities such as ethnicity, culture and gender, and assigning the labels of oppressors or victim based on the color or gender identity. If you self-identify yourself as a victim because of your race, culture, gender or sexual orientation, then anything and everything that goes wrong in your life can be blamed on the oppressing males, and everything you do to counter it will be justifiable. The main reason why MCU is receiving heavy backlash is due to its treatment and representation of men. Basically, women are represented as strong and dominant while men are represented as weak and useless. The previous movie showed some of the best male and female characters which inspired people. These characters were not famous and well known because they were picking on other gender to establish themselves, but the character and the story and the choices made by the characters made them fan favorite. But in Phase 4, women are being showed as a dominant character at the expenses of their counter males. They had to suppress male characters in order to establish themselves. The basic recipe of leading characters in MCU Phase 4 is simple. A strong lady who is in charge of everything and expect everyone to obey her authority. A stupid male character who is basically a sidekick for the strong lady and cause problems in their plans from time to time. In general, females are the superiors and they expect men to accept their authority and obey them. If you don't accept these women, then you hate them. You are a misogynist who is afraid of strong females. There is a huge difference between representing a strong character and representing a character as strong because she is a female. In all Phase 4 movies, the strong ladies fight for their needs, not for world safety or betterment of society. Shang-Chi's sister fought for the control of 10 rings. Jane Foster became Mighty Thor because she had cancer and used her power to fight men because she wanted to use catchy punchlines.
Eat my hammer!
Jennifer had dating issues, so she had to use superpowers to grab attention. The reason why Spider-Man No Way Home was a huge success at box office despite of the fact that it was released in COVID times because it had great story, great characters and mainly it had no forced agenda. It had world at stake, difficult choices, sacrifices, but most importantly, it let good people do the good deeds. Taking their strengths and weaknesses together, combine them and use it to help the people. A good story should encourage people to do the good things, inspire us. That's what heroes do. That's why people love them. After discussing all these points, we have one common thing in our mind. Will MCU reclaim its position in fans' heart? So, my answer is yes. It's true, MCU had rough time in Phase 4 with more backlashes than praises. But this is MCU. This is what they are good at. Listening to audience, give what they love and still keep the movies in their track. We wanted Avengers Assemble moment. They gave it as the best MCU moment till date. We wanted to see 3 Spider-Man swinging across New York City and fight bad people. They not only gave us what we wanted, but also made us relive our childhood days by bringing back the original Spider-Man villains with MCU touch and keeping them true to their character. We asked for mutants, we got entire X-Men. We asked for Fantastic Four, we got that one too. John Krasinski's casting as Mr. Fantastic was successful purely due to fans' campaign on social media. Last but not least, it was every Marvel fan's dream to see Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman play as Deadpool and Wolverine on the big screens. We are getting that one too, that too in R-rated. MCU knows how to please its audience. They have mastered the art of storytelling. This is the reason why MCU is still unparalleled even today. If we compare the beginning of Infinity Saga with Multiverse Saga, almost movies stand at the same point. MCU didn't see much success in their beginning apart from Iron Man movies. Incredible Hulk was a disaster. Captain America was average. Thor movies basically didn't see any success till Ragnarok. But today if we look back at these movies are masterpieces. Incredible Hulk showcased the true and ruthless nature of Hulk, which is highly lacking in recent movies. Captain America's origin story is a true inspiration to many. His story showcased that we don't have to be built strong and be special to stand up against strong. All it takes is a strong willpower. This movie also gave us one of the best moral quote. With power, good becomes great and bad becomes worse. Even though Thor movies were basically failures, but it gave us closer to Infinity Stones, introduced us to space, and most importantly, it gave us Loki. The reason I call these movies as masterpieces because MCU has redeemed these movies in future. The continuity in MCU is so on spot that these movies and its events are major ones. It's a good thing that MCU is not limiting its stories to men and some part of the world. But if you are trying to compromise in quality of movies with agenda-based movies, it doesn't matter if it's the greatest superhero franchise or a regular movie, the response will be the same. I hope that won't be the case. If we look at the future projects of MCU Phase 5 and Phase 6, there are a lot of high anticipated movies and series. Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which is set to release in November, this movie looks like a true MCU movie from the time of Spider-Man No Way Home. The posters, trailer cuts, cast interaction with media and public feels more genuine and natural. With the recent postponement of movies, we can say that MCU is taking its time in production rather than mass releasing them. I hope MCU will learn from all the backlash it received in Phase 4 and not to repeat them in Phase 5 and Phase 6. These are my views on MCU Phase 4. Feel free to correct me if some of my takings are wrong and drop down your views on MCU Phase 4 and future MCU related projects. Thank you.
That wasn't you, was it, Steven? Not a chance, mate.